I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer. Welcome to Gospel Minded, where we take a few minutes each week to talk about psychology, behavioral health, our emotions, and we reflect together on how these important topics relate to the gospel reading Sunday after Sunday. Just like always, this is not intended to be a substitute for going to church or therapy or spiritual direction if you're engaged in those sort of practices. But as we know from our experience, our psychology, our things of the mind, and our spiritual life so often go beautifully together, hand in hand. So if you like this material and you find it helpful, please go ahead and click like and subscribe, as that helps me a lot. So here we are, continuing our journey through the Easter season. And today's gospel reading comes from the Gospel of John. Really beautiful, profound, moving words, and I want to read it for you to set up the context of what I want to talk about today. It comes from John chapter 15. It goes like this. Jesus said to his disciples, "If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. This I command you, to love one another." Just deep, profound, moving words spoken by our Lord in the text of the gospel for today. Now, when I was at Mass with my family this morning, the preaching, the sermon, homily was really centered on that text exactly, the love of Father and Son, the love that the Son has for us. And so I'm not going to talk about that today. What I want to talk about in this edition of Gospel Minded is what happens when we are not experiencing that kind of love, when we don't receive that sort of love that the Lord is talking about in the gospel from other people we're trying to associate with. That can be a really difficult and challenging thing. It's happened to me in different times in my life. Maybe that's happened to you as well. It's never easy to cope with that, and it's never fun. Let me tell you a story about an experience that my wife and I have had within the last 5 years. We found ourselves in a new community along with our children, and on the outside, it looked like when we first arrived in this environment with this community that we should have plugged in and fit in with people very well. It was a whole community filled with other young families. A lot of us had similar kinds of backgrounds. A lot of us had similar sorts of interests and similar education. And importantly, on the outside looking in, it seemed like we all had similar goals and we're looking for the same kind of thing. So when my wife and I were new to this community, we thought, well, this is going to be great. We're going to meet new friends. Our kids are going to do well with these other kids. It seemed like it would be a perfect match. Well, over the first few weeks, my wife and I went outside of ourselves to try and engage with some of these other people in this new environment, tried to get to know them, tried to volunteer information about ourselves in hopes that they would want to get to know us better. And over the course of the next weeks, the next months, my spouse and I, we both just sort of got this sense that we weren't being welcomed into the group the way that we had hoped we would, the way that we thought we might. we just didn't feel like we were clicking. We didn't feel like we were really part of the community the way that we wanted to be, the way we thought we would be. And it gave us the chance to kind of examine what our motivations were for wanting to be in that community, gave us the chance to think about what other steps we could take, gave us the chance to go back to the drawing board and then look for other environments. And that's exactly what happened. After a few months of just not feeling like we were plugging in, we ended up finding a different community to associate with, and we have been so blessed and so thankful that we've found that kind of communion and community with this other group that we've been connected with. Parish family, church family. It just gave me the chance today to think about this gospel and to think about this whole idea of that love that the Lord wants to show. We want to see that also from other people, and we want to be giving that love to other people as well. But in real life, we know that interpersonal relationships are not easy, and it may be the case that others aren't going to show us love or give us a warm embrace and welcome the way that we would hope, the way that we would want. And so what do we do with that? How do we cope? How do we react? And then the fact that this happened for my wife and I at this time in our life, fascinating, because this can happen really at any time to anybody, whenever. Think about when you were younger, when we're in those awkward elementary school or middle school years, trying to figure out who our people are, who our friends are, how do we fit into that community and get into those groups. Or what about, think about when we're younger, I see a girl that I really want to get to know, or there's this guy that I really want to talk to. Those awkward exchanges, trying to be vulnerable, trying to get to know somebody and hoping that they will like us and welcome us. It happens so much when we're younger, developing, but here we are, my wife and I, at this point in our lives, still experiencing this phenomenon of wanting to fit into groups, finding a community where we can plug in and fit into. So what happens then when we have these experiences in life where we put ourselves out there and we just don't click? People just don't like us the way that we think we should be liked, or they don't embrace us or welcome us the way that we would hope. What do we do? Well, there's no easy answer. It's okay to grieve with that. It's all right if we don't quite have it figured out how to respond, because it's never easy if we're finding ourselves rejected, not welcomed. But what I said a little bit earlier is, I think, wise counsel. It gives us an opportunity to kind of think through what our motivations are for wanting to belong in this group in the first place. And this is sort of consistent with what you might find in different sorts of therapy treatment modalities, this acceptance of things the way they are. If you find yourself not being welcomed into a community or a group or whatever, it gives you the chance to find a way to accept that reality, hard though it may be. And then to sort of reflect and think about what my motivation was for wanting to be in that group in the first place. And then when you experience that, whether it's rejection or just indifference, not being welcomed, being able to really get to a place where we can make peace within our own souls about that as well. You know, the gospel is pretty clear. Jesus is saying, love one another as I have loved you. And we know from experience that we aren't always going to be loved the way that the Gospel of John encourages. And it also should hopefully trigger in us the opportunity to reflect, am I loving others the way that I wish to be loved? Has it ever happened that you have been part of a group or a community or an organization when there are outsiders or newcomers, probably wanting this same kind of thing, to get in, to get to know people, to plug in and flourish? Do we have a welcoming disposition to facilitate that, to really welcome people into the fold? I hope so. But just as we aren't always loved the way the Father loves us, we too don't always love others the way that the Lord instructs in the gospel for today. So this doesn't take anything away from the fact that interpersonal relationships are hard. That is very true. And even in the best of circumstances, sometimes it's still tricky to not be awkward or aloof or bumbling sometimes. It's hard to have really good, strong interpersonal interactions. And yet we want to try. We know psychologically that community, belonging to a group, having connections, meaningful connections with other people is so good for our psychological well-being, our spiritual well-being, just our overall well-being and our ability to flourish. But in real life, it doesn't always work out the way we hope it will when we think about it in our head. And that is okay. So the case was for my wife and I, we didn't plug in to that group we initially thought we would, and we found something else. I really believe that one of the ways the Lord shows us love is that when one avenue closes or when one route shuts down, something else will open up, something else will work out. And that's been the case for me so many times throughout the course of my life. Maybe that's been the case for you too. Important thing is that we continue to try, but second of all, we're mindful of those words from the gospel today, that even if I'm not accepted and loved by others, I can be confident and sure that I have the love of the Father. And as the Father loves the Son, so the Son loves me as well. We are accepted and we are cherished, loved, plugged in. And then we can take that love and show it to others in fulfillment of the command that the Lord leaves us in the gospel for today. So I hope this has been helpful, useful stuff to think about, good to kind of chew on and ponder. Until next time, I wish you all the best, and I hope you have a great week. I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer at Gospel Minded. Take care.